So welcome to this latest installment of the Mozu webinar series. Today we're joined by Forrester Research to bring you the New Era Digital Store, Expectations, Insights, and Consumer Individuality. My name is John Hessinger, Vice President of Marketing for Mozu, and I'll be today's moderator. Today's webinar is scheduled for an hour. We will leave time for Q&A at the end, so please feel free to submit questions along the way. So let's get to the content. I'm very excited to introduce today's presenters. First off, we're joined by Adam Silverman, Principal Analyst with Forrester Research, who will guide us through the rapidly changing customer expectations facing retailers today and beyond. And in second position, we'll hear from Jason Wallis, Chief Technology Officer for Mozu, easy for me to say, who will share how innovative technology can help retailers meet the growing demands of omnichannel shoppers. With that, I'll hand it off to you, Adam.
Great. Thanks, John, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Silverman, Principal Analyst here at Forrester, covering commerce technology, which includes what I call classic e-commerce tech, order management, e-commerce platforms, but also a new breed of commerce technology that's being infused into the digital store, things like MPOS and beacons. And as we see in the industry today, a lot of that technology is coming together in new ways to create new value for customers. So we'll talk a little bit about that throughout this presentation. One of my favorite quotes, it doesn't quite feel dated because this quote is still relevant today, although it was mentioned last year. Like Nordstrom mentioned, the pace of change is accelerating faster than anticipated a year ago, and so I would say that that's still occurring today. In fact, when I think about my background as sort of coming from an e-commerce and digital marketing perspective, before I worked at Forrester, I ran e-commerce for companies like Musician's Friend and Wet Seal. And so when I first started e-commerce 15 plus years ago, it was still very complex. There was lots of integrations that needed to take place, but we were often left alone, and so we had this greenfield approach. But one thing that was different then versus now is the customer expectations have changed quite rapidly. Back 15 years ago, mobile wasn't really a thing. It wasn't something that people did in terms of using their smartphones in stores or in unique ways. And so the complexity today is, I think, much greater than it was in the past when we've been through some of these cycles of rapid growth around technology. And a way in which I like to express that is with this slide. So this is looking at the percent of usage based upon location for these devices. So you can see that tablets here on the top right represent those locations at home, things like the living room and your bedroom. And the other locations are either while you're traveling or at another location, a third-party location. And you can see here the tablet is very much a replacement device. But the main story here, you could probably anticipate this next set of data, which is really the smartphone and where that's used. And the large circles around the outside of the smartphone icon really just indicates with data the usage of smartphones in many different locations. And you can see here that in stores at 66%, not quite the highest, but one of the highest numbers there in terms of the location in which smartphones are used. So again, just a way in which I express sort of what's changing now versus in the past. And here's the agenda that we'll cover. We'll talk a little bit more about the connected customer. Then we'll do a sort of a case study approach and look at how technology is creating opportunities in the retail environment. And then I'll finish with some recommendations. So the first thing I wanted to discuss was, what's really being impacted from digital. And, we've heard through Forrester's forecasts and other forecasts as well that, e-commerce is roughly 10% of overall revenue for retailers. And, that number fluctuates depending upon different kinds of verticals, but that's roughly the number that's quoted widely in the press. But from a customer's perspective, they don't really care about channels. I mean, that's sort of an internal metric that we use. And in fact, what we see is that most sales are actually influenced online, even though they take place in the store. So this stat here says that even though 10% of overall sales occur online, 52% of store sales are influenced online. So it's the role of digital to influence sales, not always to take those sales in those form factors, whether it be on mobile or web. And in fact, this number also changes based upon category and vertical. In apparel, the number is 71%. So 71% of store sales and apparel are influenced by some sort of online or digital transaction, or I should say engagement. Now, companies like Target, in one of their recent press announcements, mentioned that 98% of their guests shop digitally. So that's quite impressive. That could be engaging with a retargeted banner ad or using a mobile device or their Cartwheel app. They feel that their number is quite high in terms of those that are influenced digitally. And if it's not apparent now, the importance of digital and the importance of mobile, I'll use another Target example. So this crazy pattern here is a Lilly Pulitzer pattern, and you might have heard a few months ago that Lilly Pulitzer, their launch at Target, actually brought down the entire website. The reason that was, again, quoted from Target, was that it was the high demand in mobile traffic and transactions is what brought down the entire commerce platform. So this was a mobile-driven event, and just again, they didn't anticipate the volume of interaction on their mobile platform. So, again, there's real consequences if retailers today are not focusing on these new types of, I guess I shouldn't call it new anymore, but these newer types of engagement channels such as mobile. And sort of looking at channel integration in terms of what customers expect, they have high expectations when it comes to the integration of channels. They don't really, again, think about channels, but this is how they express in terms of what they expect in terms of capability. So 73% of customers expect to click and collect, which is either buy or reserve online and pick up in the store. 86% expect to return online orders in the store. I'm actually surprised that's not 100%, but coming from the industry, I know how hard this can be in terms of managing the inventory across what has historically been siloed channels. And then 89% expect to view the in-store inventory of products online. So that's a real big one, because many retailers I speak with say, okay, this is great. You have this data that shows that customers they expect these integrations. Well, but what if I don't do it? What's the risk? And so we've quantified that as well. In our survey data, a quarter of customers won't even go into the store if they cannot view that offline inventory online. And that's because customers are pre-shopping and they want to have the confidence that when they go into the store that the product they're looking for is there. So even if you have 1 million of those widgets in stock, if you don't give that confidence and express that to customers, there is a real chance that they will not come into your physical store. Looking at some more data in terms of customer behavior. So this is a Forrester Technographics question. It basically asks, in the past 3 months, have you used your cell phone for any of the following while shopping in a physical store? I will point out that this number, the time is only 3 months. So you might have seen other forecasts that have larger numbers in terms of the use of mobile devices in stores. But just keep in mind the time frame for this survey. So, but still, the insight's still the same. So at the top of the list, in terms of what customers are using their mobile phones in store, it's not for these exceptional whiz-bang experiences with beacons and highly engaging experiences. The reality is that customers first and foremost want to have confidence to know that they're getting the lowest price, and so they often use their phone to check price or redeem and search for a coupon. And then also in the top bracket at 17% is to look at product information. So just basic shopping behavior, nothing too fancy here, but you can see the basics are what customers want. And oftentimes your commerce platform and an integrated order management is needed in order to meet the needs of these basic needs of customers. And then further down the list here, you can see to access the internet via guest Wi-Fi, to locate a nearby store, to use shopping lists. So some of the other components around reading product reviews, and even some social sharing about taking pictures and sharing with friends. So you can see the hierarchy of needs from customers here in terms of how they want to use mobile devices in aisle. Now, they also expect the associate to have connectivity too. part of that is because there might be a brand component to it, meaning the associate has a digital device and therefore I think they're knowledgeable and it resonates with me as a brand. But at the same time, they also feel that the associate is not necessarily the best source of information. And so having a mobile device enables the associate to actually provide information that historically they couldn't provide to customers in a seamless way. So at the baseline, 39% of customers are interested in using a store employee equipped with a mobile device. And in fact, in a previous survey, they said that they're more likely to even interact and shop with those customers. I'm sorry, with those associates. But as you can see here, in terms of the different categories, you can see the different needs by category of customers and their desire to work with digitally enabled associates. Those categories around luxury and appliances and jewelry, those things that are more of a considered purchase, the majority of customers actually are more likely and interested in working with associates with digital devices for some of the reasons that I mentioned to you before. So, it's not one size fits all in store. Think about how your customers want to interact with your brand and what their needs are and what the associates can do to help those customers, and then you'll find sort of that right mix in terms of what kinds of features and functions you'll offer to customers via the associate digital device. Then also looking at data, this is really a growing and emerging area around in-store analytics and overall data capture within the retail store. So the reality is that there are new technologies that are enabling retailers to collect and capture data, and that's really skyrocketed. One of the vendors that we work with that does in-store analytics mentioned that they get over 10,000 individual data points in terms of shopping behavior within a store. So currently, that's not being used very efficiently or very well by retailers, but we're starting to get to the point where the data is there and it just needs to be turned into insight. And so to that point, even looking at more broadly across business, only 12% of enterprise data is used for analytics. And in the case of digital store analytics, it's much lower, but still represents an opportunity because when we ask customers about personalized experiences and what they're willing to spend, 45% of those customers have chosen or recommended or paid more for a brand that provides a personalized service or experience. And just like e-commerce, the physical store will become that digitally driven location, and in the future, retailers will be using this data in order to generate insight that's going to create these personalized experiences. And so personalization is coming to the retail store. I'll talk about a few examples here a little bit later, but also when you think about personalization, it's not always just the technology in terms of what's in front of the customer. Oftentimes the associate can and often should be considered the personalization engine, if you will, and so they might need some tools just to enable that experience. And to the customer, it might feel maybe less less overt in terms of the use of technology. So some interesting, I think, a maturity that will occur over the years as data starts to be infused within the physical space. Okay, so going to the second part of our agenda, let's talk about how digital is creating opportunities in retail. And so we're going to go through a few of these and I'll use some case studies and examples as we go through these next 7 or so slides. So digital technologies create opportunities in retail by, number one, enabling new insights. And so this is an example of just using in-store analytics to do some basic stuff like just adjusting the floor set and making sure that the flow is optimal through the store. So companies like Crocs and others have enabled in-store analytics and have done some sort of space optimization. And oftentimes in those first few iterations, you find some pretty big holes or opportunities, and conversion rate can lift anywhere from 10 to 20%. And so in this example with Crocs, their conversion rate and revenue increased double digits by implementing in-store analytics. So opportunities include optimizing profitability. And by the way, there's going to be many different case studies that we can use for these slides. And so I'm choosing one, feel free to ask additional questions later if you'd like additional examples as well. But here's one from a company called Hointer. That's Hointer with an H. And what they do is they're a technology platform that optimizes the shopping experience, basically just by putting one item on the floor. The customer scans that item and builds their basket, and when they're ready to try on the product, they simply hit the button that says they're ready to try on. The system assigns them a dressing room, and someone in the back room, either, and it can even be robotics, but they're in a very efficient way bringing those products to the dressing room. So by the time you get into the dressing room, the products that you've already added to your quote-unquote cart are in the dressing room, and there's a digital display there that allows you to get different sizes. And so what that allows them to do is to reduce the amount of SKUs that are actually on the floor. So in terms of the depth of SKUs, right? All the inventory is basically in the back room. And so the individual choices expand by 60% in a standard, or I guess just sort of any kind of physical space, right? So they're able to represent more products and create this seamless way of shopping that increases profitability. Again, they're showing more styles per square foot. They're going to drive more revenue with this approach. So that's an example from a company called Pointer. Okay, so empowering employees. So this is an important one here. So opportunities exist to empower employees by generating or enabling associates to access things like endless aisle. And in the case of UGG, this is the shoe manufacturer who sells more than just shoes, by the way, but in their owned stores, they're experimenting with tablets in the hands of associates and explicitly allowing them to access endless aisle where it matters most within the aisle itself. And in some of their smaller footprint stores, they have realized, or they're able to see roughly 20 or so percent of sales go through the endless aisle. So as they expand into new markets, maybe in more touristy areas where the footprint is smaller, they're able to transition some of those sales to endless aisle sales and access additional inventory that historically they wouldn't be able to do just because of the smaller footprint. So they're seeing some impactful results there. Fourth, improving service levels. This is a nod towards omni-channel fulfillment, in particular store fulfillment. You could probably put store fulfillment in many different buckets. I put it in the service level bucket because of this quote from Best Buy, and that they're able to promise delivery 2 full days quicker than before. So yes, there's a cost for doing that. It might not actually be the most profitable order that you fulfill that day because of the additional labor, and in fact, it might even require splitting orders if you're going to fulfill from, let's say, a multi-item order. If you fulfill one item from one store and another item from another store or a DC, that the expense actually can rise. But if it's something that's within your profitability range and you're able to fulfill from a store, you can actually do that and get it to the customer faster, as in the case with Best Buy. Influencing sales. In aisle, a recent survey said that 82% of customers make purchase decisions in aisle. This is not meaning that customers have no idea when they go into a store what they want, but they're open to adding items to their basket and considering additional products while actually in aisle. And so just a massive opportunity for retailers to use data and technology to understand the needs of customers, whether that be through analytics or even some explicit activity that they use on their cell phone in terms of price comparison shopping. Whatever the input may be, there are hooks that retailers can leverage in order to identify customers that might be in this 82%. And then, of course, the action can take place there, and it could be a multitude of actions, including sending an associate to talk with that customer, or might even be about retargeting at a later date when they're outside of the store. So it doesn't have to be that the action takes place there, but I think there's an opportunity for retailers to take advantage of this specific behavior of customers within the store. Number 6, bridging the physical with the digital. That's the Facebook like button. And I put this one here because I want to have a little discussion around beacons, which has been a very widely publicized topic. But I think some of the use cases haven't been very good for a variety of reasons. And I just think that, and not to get into too much detail here because it's not necessarily about beacons itself, but the miss has been the use cases haven't necessarily been that appropriate for customers. I think customers do want coupons, but they don't necessarily want to be bombarded with alerts in aisle. So what Facebook has done is they're giving away beacons now for free to retailers, and that means that the beacon can interact with the Facebook app within the store. So this is a new paradigm that's causing a commoditization of the beacon technology, right? The beacon itself is no longer the special sauce. It's really the service around that. And the fact that there's so many installs of the Facebook app mean that Facebook has the opportunity to create some scale here. But that's not to mean that Apple's iBeacon is going away anytime soon. And in fact, Google just announced a new protocol called Eddystone that will allow beacons to interact with phones even without an application. And they use basically a URL-based approach rather than just a beacon approach and interacting with a specific app. So probably a topic for a whole nother webinar, but we're seeing some pretty good advancements in bringing the physical, bridging the physical with the digital, and here are some examples from companies that are doing it well. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, personalizing the shopping experience. This is an example of a Rebecca Minkoff store where they're using technology in the dressing room. It might be hard to see, but the images of someone in the dressing room, you can see the reflection in the mirror, but the mirror also has this display. And again, basically, she's in the dressing room and she can request additional products rather than having to get dressed again and find those products. And as she requests those products, an associate can bring the products to her. She's trying on more products in the dressing room. She's more satisfied with the experience. And then, of course, all the data that's associated with that session can be captured and leveraged either in the store for additional product recommendations or outside of the store as well. So a few barriers that I want to call out here. There's 4 real big ones that I think are preventing some of these opportunities from taking hold in the physical retail store. So one is connectivity. Poor store connectivity is definitely preventing modern retail apps from being effective. And so as we think about, let's say, cloud-based MPOS or associate devices, that needs to have full coverage within the store. And so the good news is a lot of stores do have some sort of Wi-Fi or even guest Wi-Fi coverage. The challenge is it's not always that robust in every corner of the store. So I think some improvements still need to be made in terms of connectivity. And what this will enable are agile cloud-hosted applications to take hold and leading to improved customer engagement because the systems in store can then access things like product and customer profiles quickly and then deliver those experiences to the customer or the associate. And then also this enables ecosystems in the stores to be established too. So point solutions such as analytics and task management have a common gateway to communicate, and that's over that Wi-Fi and that connectivity within the store. Number 2, in terms of barriers, is that retail store systems are generally focused on record keeping and not engagement. This is I hope this is a historical statement soon, because the reality is that these systems in stores that have traditionally been just focused on keeping track of orders and where products are now being pivoted to be systems of engagement. And a great example of that is POS and MPOS, and then also the convergence of commerce both in physical and digital. So e-commerce platforms creating, for instance, in-store capabilities for associates, I think is also representative of that trend of the technology moving from record keeping to engagement. And you'll see a greater focus on technologies shifting from just keeping track of stuff to actually focusing on engagement. So things like omni-channel fulfillment and endless aisle, improved associate performance, and then of course mobile-enabled store experiences all require those store systems to be focused on engagement. 3, existing systems can't provide real-time data insights across all channels. So we're still stuck in silos. I mentioned InStore Analytics is good at collecting data, and it might be good at providing insights in terms of adjusting your floor set based upon traffic patterns, but there's a deeper purpose there as well. For instance, in the future, near future, we'll be seeing skills-based routing within the physical store, where analytics knows where a specific customer is, they know where an associate is that has the right skill set, and the combination of those two technologies will provide real-time insights. The key there is that that insight then needs to be captured at the customer level and then put into the CRM or data warehouse so that that interaction can be leveraged in other channels. So that that multi-channel view of customer, or that single view of customers, is critical, and that's critical in order to provide real-time insights in the store of the future. And so this will allow for us to understand customer behavior, also the operational effectiveness of associates, right, in terms of how what their journey map should be when interacting with customers, even things like inventory optimization and understanding marketing and merchandising, specifically the path to purchase. And then finally, no shocker here, retail teams are still siloed. So I get it. I mean, I've worked on the retailer side of the fence for many, many years, and sometimes change can feel like it's moving slowly. So unfortunately, we still have the scenario where retail teams are siloed. I think we've done a better job of having the CMO, the marketing function, and the technology functions come together. But from that business side or marketing side, let's call it direct marketing or e-business, coupled with store operations, I think that's a dynamic duo as well, where we can apply some of the operational, the way in which we operate e-commerce into the physical store. I think that the e-business or e-commerce leader now potentially has an opportunity to help out in the physical store, and I think that we should see tighter coupling there. I don't see it so much today. I still think it's pretty far apart. But and then that's why it's here under the barrier page, right? So we need a common set of initiatives across all channels. We need alignment on success measurements, shared customer obsessed vision, and agility needs to be infused into the store. For instance, a test and learn approach in terms of optimizing experiences, whether it be for customers or for associates. And just a few more slides, and then I'll hand it back over. So this is all leading to the digital store platform, right? So let me just roll this out. You'll see a series of layers here, and these are capability layers. You have to imagine between these lines that there's connectivity or APIs that are being used to integrate these different layers. But just starting at the bottom, we see enterprise back office systems. This could be things like CRM and ERP and merchandising systems. That's obviously not going away. But one level up, you can see where it says digital experience platform. That's really a mashup of content and commerce, right? And we're seeing that as more broadly called the digital experience layer. So that is happening now for e-commerce, and it's now starting to be employed in physical locations as well. We're not that far off from a central commerce and digital experience platform that runs both online and offline experiences. The first green bar right in the middle, again, I'm moving from the bottom up, digital store systems. So these are things like MPOS, analytics, task management. These are going to work as an ecosystem at that layer and communicate with each other. And I mentioned the example of skills-based routing and how two store systems can work together in real time. But that also needs hooks, obviously, back to commerce and content if you're going to be showing customers products. And then, of course, integration into back office as well. So we go back down the stack there. One from the top is contextual delivery, right? So we're now very close to communicating and providing experiences to customers and associates. And that contextual delivery is going to add things like location as a big one. But it can include other third-party data such as weather or even social profile information about a customer. And so that gets augmented with that digital experience layer, and you start to see this sort of linkage here that occurs between a digital experience platform and that contextual delivery. And then, of course, finally, the touch points. The touch points could be the reason why there's two people there. One's the associate, one's the customer. It could be digital signage. It could be MPOS, the customer's mobile device. But this is how we see technology sort of aligning itself in order to power the digital store. And it basically turns the store into a platform. So it's store as a platform, or what I like to say, it's the digital store platform. And we're seeing a lot of innovation in many of these different areas, and we'll hear from the Mozu team in a little bit on what they're doing from that digital experience and commerce layer as well. And so finally, the recommendations here. It's just one slide, so let me just open it up and I'll discuss all of these 6 elements here. So first, expose inventory visibility. Going back to the beginning of the deck, if you're not sharing your store inventory, customers are not going to go into your store, right? Plus, enabling enterprise visibility of inventory is the foundation for omnichannel fulfillment, which has a proven ROI and drives incremental sales. So, hopefully, hopefully this is nothing new. If it is to you, then this needs to become your number one priority or very close to the top. And most of the companies that I work with today are already working very aggressively to do this, and many of the larger retailers have already done this and have done it for many years. 2, focus on the customer, both aligning teams around the customer, but also creating that single view of customer. It's really important to have both aspects be adjusted in order to meet the needs of the omni-channel customer. 3, optimize customer and staff mobile experiences. I think we get the customer piece. It's the staff piece that is often overlooked. In fact, in my research, most of the agencies said they're not testing the experience for associates, or it's a set it and forget it approach. And the thing is, when the associate doesn't like the experience, what are they going to do? They're going to just leave the device behind the counter. It's almost like it's off or broken at that point in time. So there's no wiggle room. It has to meet all of their needs, them meaning the associate. 4, prepare for real-time data-driven business online and in stores. We know what that's like online. We sort of know what it's like in stores, but it's always been historical, right? The Monday morning meetings where you look at last week's sales is a great example. We need to move in real time. The store will be moving in real time and operate in real time. 5, find ecosystem partners and build new business models. So this is about looking at those partners that can help you within the digital store and thinking about your vendors in terms of that ecosystem and encouraging them to work together. Oftentimes, well, I shouldn't say oftentimes, we're starting to see some of these emerging technologies form partnerships and go pitch clients an idea that actually emulates that ecosystem. So that's really important to do as a vendor who's trying to take advantage of some of these new technologies and capabilities. And then finally, build your digital store platform. Centralize commerce and the digital experience. This is a journey, and certainly the building blocks at the bottom of the stack are where most people are spending most of their time. So even though you might not hear of a retailer who's progressive in the news every day about some new digital store initiative, trust me, behind the scenes, they're exposing these systems and creating the linkage between these systems in order to create that real-time store of the future. Okay, so there was a lot there, but now I'm going to hand it back over to John. I think you're taking it away to make transitions to Jason.
Yeah, this is very enlightening. Really appreciate it. And actually, the sound quality's gotten better on our end, so appreciate that. Yeah, I will. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Jason. I think you've got to get into the technology components and how people are solving these.
Yeah, thanks, John and Adam. Adam, I really enjoyed the kind of hearing the output of Forrester's research and your insights from your experience into that, and how the store is evolving and consumer behavior is evolving, and how retailers can try to get in front of these trends and kind of get on top of things. And I feel like want to shift gears now and talk about from digital commerce platform providers' perspective, kind of how we see things. And certainly as we look out in the market, and as we looked out when we were bringing Mozu to market, there definitely was a very common thread amongst retailers of feeling like that there was this drowning feeling from the rapid change in consumer expectations and behavior. And from our standpoint, the digital platform is really the area where if you can make the right investments kind of at the bottom of the stack in your diagram, you can kind of get on top of that wave and ride it instead of being constantly kind of just pummeled by this change that is not stopping at all. It's continuing at the pace that we've seen in the last few years. So the key thing when we reflect back and when we sort of looked at the commerce platform market was there was kind of a before and an after, and the before and the after really was around the development of the modern smartphone platform. And the iPhone came out first in '07, which set the standard for mobile computing. Android followed with their first devices a year after that. And the key thing is that not only did that usher in new interactions and making it, frankly, making it more effective for consumers to use these very small form factor devices, but it changed behavior dramatically. And what was kind of evolving into in the, around the 2010 timeframe, this sort of online and in-store and this dual sort of behavior of customers became a journey. And that journey is completely empowered by the mobile technology. It's a consumer technology revolution, and retailers have to be in that playing field where consumers are playing if they want to capture the dollars that consumers are spending. So that shift from multi-channel into this journey that a customer's on, and they're interacting with brands and retailers at many different touch points along this journey. And digital is kind of uniquely positioned to serve that, because the revolution is a revolution in bringing the internet into all aspects of consumers' lives. And so having a very connected, experience-driven platform that can conduct commerce is the key to being in all the places where consumers are. For us, that really led to the birth of Mozu. And Mozu is a very modern cloud commerce platform that I really summarize in 3 words that I think are key to being to empowering retailers in this market. It's open, capable, and modern. And open is obviously central because the experiences that we need to power today are not necessarily the experiences that are going to be important tomorrow. Wearables are a great example of that. The early adoption of wearables is not dissimilar to the early adoption of the smartphone platform. So if we're building only for kind of mobile small form factor and desktop digital experiences and maybe in-store experiences, but we haven't thought about wearables or aren't positioned to address wearables, guess what? That feeling in another year or two, if it does take off in the same trend that the smartphone did, it's going to be that flat-footed, how do I catch up again? The consumer moved and I'm back over here. So as a platform, this open digital experience platform has to be structured and in such a way that as those new experiences emerge, that merchants and marketers have very effective tools they can use to manage at those many different touch points. Personalization is central to that as well, because you can't really have customer first and channel last marketing if you don't have personalization. Those 2 things have to go hand in hand. You need to be able to have a platform that can empower your marketing team so they can effectively create experiences that can be visible to customers across all those channels. That means very strong tooling for managing the experience. Obviously, CMS, having that an ability to sort of catch data from many different locations to serve it up. Inventory is key to that as well. So open, capable, and then the nice, the whole point about being modern is there are very successful platforms out in the market today that were built kind of in the pre-smartphone era and kind of launched in that time frame. But it's very difficult to position those platforms for success in the future at a cost that you can actually operationalize the platform. And it's going to be, as the consumer continues this change, it's going to get more and more challenging for retailers just to add additional tools into an already complex ecosystem and then actually effectively manage all that to provide a digital experience that is expected by consumers. The key part of this journey that we've seen that's important is providing consistency wherever the customer is. That is consistent across devices and also consistent across kind of an in-store experience as well. And the key thing is not just consistent content. It's not just give me product and catalog pricing information but give me consistent features and functionality. So I need to have access to inventory visibility. I need to be able to reserve a product for pickup in store. I need to have the price computations and discounts and all the features across all the modes as a customer that interact. I expect that to be consistent across those devices and not have kind of first class and second class experiences. And in order to provide that feature consistency and the data consistency, you have to break down the siloed, channeled tools and processes that have probably organically grown up over time for most retailers and brands. Because if you don't break that down, you may have all the capability in the world from a platform and toolset standpoint, but actually scaling a team to operationalize it, because software requires care and feeding. I wish it was as easy as buy a piece of software and install it and I get 100% of the capabilities out of the box. But as we all know, that's not the way the world works. So the big question is, if I have a platform that's capable, am I going to be able to scale my team and my staff and my processes to actually operationally enable all of the features and experiences that that my customer's demanding? And that's where we feel like, some of the critical concepts we've brought into Mozu are really enable that operationalizing of the features. The second kind of customer change that we've seen because of this technology revolution is a demand for instant gratification and convenience. And I don't know, I'm sure we've all experienced it. You're out with your friends and somebody asks a question, and somebody in the group decides they're going to ask Siri or ask Google for the answer, and you get the answer back in about 4 seconds. And we've kind of ushered into a time now where there are no unanswered questions. Everything is knowable. I can use my voice or text and kind of search and find the answers. And so that's become an expectation of the consumer when it comes to shopping experiences as well. I need the capabilities to be where the customer is, and if it's not there, I kind of start to feel like, as a brand, that maybe you're not really aware of my needs, and I'm going to shift and go somewhere else. And I think the expectations around in-store availability and being able to check in-store availability are a reflection of that. I think Adam touched on it as well. There is quite an aversion that's created in customers' mind where if they can't even go online to see if inventory is available in store, they won't even go in the store to buy the product. So it's about saving time. It's about I'm about to go make a purchase. I want to know where data is. So your platform needs to be, an effective platform, honestly, needs to be positioned in such a way that it can bring all this data together from different sources and provide it across devices and channels for customers and associates wherever they might need it as they make their decisions about where they're going to purchase. In terms of touching a little bit more detailed on the operational side of things and how to streamline things, a lot of what the concepts that we built into the Mozu platform, because we had the advantage of understanding this omni-channel area when we built the platform and put it together, is making choices and giving retailers and brands the ability to make choices about how they want to maintain data, what data is shared, what data is not shared, and then also providing effective ways for developers and merchants to make decisions about how that data is going to be shown up on different devices. So it's not just about having shared content, it's about being able to control on a large form factor device, on an in-store device, on a tablet that an associate's using, or a mobile device, what is going to show up when, as well as having a common source for that data. And so responsive is a key part of that. Obviously, responsive design is a key strategy that can be used, but just having an effective operational tool set and concept so that you don't have to over-maintain data, and you can source data from many different sources, whether it's user-generated content, such as additional marketing assets or imagery or ratings and reviews or vendor-supplied catalogs, et cetera. Just being able to bring all that together in efficiently in one platform is absolutely critical. The other piece that is a key advantage, and some of the one of the core advantages we feel that SaaS frankly has, is this ability to be a platform that can embrace the change that's going on in the marketplace. And for SaaS and for Mozu in particular, what that really means is that our ability to deliver features to retailers and into the platform, because of the delivery model of software and how we treat customers and just our entire approach and philosophy, is much faster than when with traditional licensed software, on-premise software vendors. And so, we can deliver features at kind of a breakneck pace relative to the 12 to 18 to 24 month life cycle of change that you see from other providers. And in a time when consumer behavior is changing so dramatically, that's frankly a necessity. If your platform can't keep up and enable you to stay ahead of that change, then even if you make an investment, make a decision now, you're going to find that you're not skating to the puck, because the puck left and you're still standing where you were when you made these investments, and made those decisions on a platform that's not able to embrace that change. The other key thing is that there's this intentional kind of fracture in the system that's very critical, and that's this sort of API first, very open technology platform that allows the many different touch points as they evolve. And kind of referring back to Adam's diagram, the digital experience platform was kind of the core, the center of that, but then you had multiple levels on that for contextual delivery of content and the evolving touch points. Those touch points aren't going to stay the same. So it's very important that your platform have the awareness of that, and a modern platform such as Mozu was very much built with that in mind, so that as touch points and consumer behavior evolves, the platform is positioned well and leaves retailers positioned well to take advantage of those changes. The other key thing about embracing ecosystems of change is that not only is it important for the platform to be able to innovate, but the experiences that are delivered by brands and retailers need to be able to be innovated upon. And so, we've striven at Mozu to provide the capability for creating these virtuous innovation cycles. And I'll explain what I mean by a virtuous innovation cycle. And the innovation cycle really starts with informed innovation. So for us, it's about retailers and brands really understanding their market, their customers' behavior, what the desired experiences are, and using that data to make a decision that, I want to try new things. I don't necessarily want to have to go through giant expense to make small changes, but I want to have the ability to try new things and sort of see what sticks. And that try is the entry point into a virtuous cycle. So it's an informed decision. You want to try to deliver a new novel customer experience. You deploy it in a limited way. You learn from it, you adjust what that experience is, and then you do a full deployment. If it, when it succeeds, you're then willing to try again, and that cycle can repeat. The success of being nimble enough to be able to have innovation achieved very quickly in a cost-effective way enables you to keep that cycle going and become innovative and stay ahead of the curve, because consumer technology is not stopping and standing still. The opposite of that is a vicious innovation cycle. And we talk to a lot of folks, on legacy platforms, they find themselves in this mode where the cost of change is so great, and that they've attempted to try new things. And if they didn't work, the cost of change to adjust was a barrier. So they tried a new thing, they couldn't adjust, it failed, and they now fear trying new things because the cost of trying new things, innovating, is so high. And the mode that they're left in then is that they're stuck and they're falling further behind. So for us, enabling the platform to be innovative is key, but also empowering retailers to be innovative is an essential part of having a successful platform that will keep up with these shifts in consumer technology. As an overall platform, I'd say Mozu was built for merchants, marketers, and developers, kind of with them in mind. So very strong tooling, very robust infrastructure for customizing and extending the core functionality, and allowing there to be a dialogue between the developer and the operational staff to say, how do I want to manage my site? How do I want to manage in-store experiences? How do I want to what capabilities do I want to give directly to marketers and merchants, and what capabilities do I want to reserve for developers to have a little more control? So there's this whole methodology and process for empowering those two, or those sets of teams to work together to provide very innovative experiences for consumers. just touching briefly on some of our success stories and clients that are on the platform and experiencing kind of the joys of being on top of this wave of change. Jelly Belly is a great example. A great brand that we all recognize. Had prior to coming to Mozu, had a homegrown digital platform, an online platform, and had hit a point where their internal team couldn't keep up with what was happening, and it was impacting their business growth. And so came to us, moved over to the Mozu platform, and now the results speak for themselves. They've got a fantastic mobile and desktop experience. They've been able to scale their operations team, and the real key is that the increase in their mobile revenue from 2% to 32% of sales was just a huge thing for them. And the top line numbers, the week after they launched on the platform was a record banner week for them. So very pleased with those results. The team's very pleased with that results. Another example is the Sigma Beauty site and their kind of online shopping experience that they brought over. And they had a couple of challenges that they were facing. One was they wanted to shift to a younger demographic. They wanted a better mobile experience, and they wanted to have a more engaging site experience. And so, they moved over to Mozu and built some very innovative experiences unique to their market. And the numbers kind of speak for themselves as well. In this one, they had a 36% lift in conversion, 42% increase in mobile sales. So once again, that ability to effectively deliver consistent mobile features and content and experience, really was a strong mover for their business. And the telling one about increasing engagement was that their time on site went up by 22%. So once again, very pleased with the outcome. They had a kind of shifting off of other platforms and getting onto a modern stack that was enabling their business. I'd encourage anyone that feels like they think that they're not on top of things and they're riding under the sea of change and want to get on top of it, to come check us out. Come visit Mozu, request a demo. We'll be happy to give you a tour and take you through what a modern platform can do for your business. With that, I'll turn it back over to John.
Great. Thanks, Jason. And thank you too, Adam, for both your presentation. This really speaks to me as a marketer and something we live every day, just how big the opportunity really is for retailers, et cetera, to continue to evolve and innovate in order to deliver against what, has become modern consumer expectations. And by doing so and using technology to get there, really increasing our share of wallet. So great presentation, great content, thank you. And also, from the participants, thank you for your participation. We've had a lot of great questions, and I'll get into the Q&A portion now. So I'll kick it off actually with Adam. This one, there are two pieces of industry terminology that came up during your discussion from several people that were asking for clarification. I think it's a good kind of benchmark. One of them is the physical device beacons. Can you describe what beacons are and kind of how they're used today?
Yes. Beacons are small, low-power devices that simply broadcast a location, like an address. This is the soda aisle. You're in front of Coca-Cola, let's say. It is up to your smartphone. In today's paradigm, it's through an app. So the application in conjunction with the smartphone hear those beacons. It's the location. It's just a number, location number 1, let's say. And then that request goes back to, through the store connectivity, whether it's Wi-Fi or it could even be regular cellular connectivity, through the mobile app, and interacts with the content and campaign management system that then determines, okay, if you're near location number 1, take this action, right? Show you content or give you an offer. So the beacon just simply identifies the location. It's your smartphone that communicates back and asks, what should I do? And then, usually an enterprise system, whether it be a content or campaign management system, will then send back the information to the smartphone and create the experience for the customer. So in essence, it's a location, it's a it's proximity experience. So it's an experience based upon your location. That's just one manifestation of how beacons work.
Okay, great. That's helpful. The other is more of a concept with multiple applications. It's the concept of endless aisle. Can you unpack that just quickly for us?
Yep. Endless aisle is being able to sell inventory that might live within your distribution center, um, such as your online store, but doesn't live within the actual physical store. So most retailers are able to have a larger assortment online because they can either store the products in a warehouse, or they have drop shipping where the actual vendor, the manufacturer, sends the product on behalf of the retailer. So you might have 100 items in the store, but you can have 1,000 in your distribution center. And the term endless aisle basically means accessing those 900 additional SKUs that are outside of your store but can still be sold by the retailer.
Great, thank you. This one I think is for Jason. You mentioned in one of your slides how businesses can use mobile to empower in-store associates. About 40% of my revenue is generated in-store. Could you provide examples of how I can take advantage of these technologies to better cater to my customers?
Yeah, I think the Forrester research kind of backs that fact up as well. That one of the key points of interaction in a store that can provide a really great experience is your associates, and there is kind of there's kind of a binary effect. If an associate doesn't have the data that you're looking for and can't help you answer questions about a particular product or what other inventory is available, then the associate's not seen as a helper and might not actually provide a very delightful experience. But if an associate is empowered with technology so that they do have the ability to see inventory availability, pricing information, even view order history that's available for that specific customer, all that sort of data, then it becomes a very effective experience and a delightful experience for customers. So it's one of the key elements of kind of that core stance that Mozu has, and the reason why we provide out of the box, mobile, tablet, in-store digital assistant applications that are integrated right into the content, the catalog information, inventory, order, and customer data that's available on the entire platform. So we see that as, there's lots of evidence in industry, and the research kind of backs it up, that the key thing is don't, in my opinion, don't remove the associate from the equation, but give the associate tools to enrich the experience and meet the expectations that consumer has, because, once again, we're back in that no unanswered questions, instant gratification. Consumer says, well, I have access to all this information. Why can't an associate have all the same information from inside that retailer? Why don't they have the same thing? So give it to them, and that's kind of one of the core positions that we think is a value proposition about the Mozu platform.
And Jason, I'll just add to that. When you, if you have a kiosk that, let's say, has some of those capabilities, my research shows that by putting that same technology in the hands of an associate who can communicate the value and go to where the customers are, just by empowering the associate with the same sort of technology, revenue, let's say through endless aisle, actually doubles when you use the associate versus a standalone kiosk. So, that's straight from retailers, especially large retailers that have tested this out. Empowering the associate has an ROI.
We've got time for one last question here, and Adam, I think this is a great one for you. And it's really implementing a lot of these solutions that where the rubber meets the road, and actually taking advantage of these. As you're looking across the landscape and talking to so many people, what investment priorities are top of mind for e-business leaders, and what should people be investing in?
So today, and for the past couple of years, it has been omni-channel fulfillment. So basically being able to sell any product and fulfill it from any location. There's incremental revenue there. As an example, for those organizations that enable buy online and ship from store, they see their e-commerce revenue grow anywhere from 10 to 30%. So that is where the priority has been and still continues to be. Looking out, when we ask e-business leaders what they're focusing on next, it's things like personalization, single view of the customer, a unified account across physical and digital touch points. And again, that's where I think you see a lot of the hooks into the Mozu platform and commerce platforms in general in terms of providing the ability for retailers to do that. So the personalization, single view of customer explicitly is what's coming down the pike in the next 1 to 3 years.
Great. Thanks very much. Very enlightening, guys. We're at the end of our hour. I wanted to thank both Adam and Jason for their time and insight, and thank you to our audience for all the interaction and joining us on this latest installment of the Mozu webinar series. We will see you again next time. Thank you.